Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jeff. This is the Peachtober part 2 video. So today I'm going to be going through my prompts from 17 through to 31. If you haven't seen part 1, the video will already be up on my channel, so feel free to go check that one out. I might even put the link in the description. But yeah, I'm just gonna talk through what I did for all of them, and let's just get into it. Okay, so editing Jeff here. I forgot to mention as well. So you'll notice a change in location and outfit between, I think it's number 21 and 22. That's because my camera ran out of battery when I was in the studio recording, and so now I'm at home, and yeah, so that's why there's a difference. But otherwise, yeah, let's just get into it. Number 17 was blush, and I used an illustration I did during lockdown as my starting point because I thought it captured blush really well, almost like blushing. I used it mainly for the pose, so really focusing on the pinching of the cheeks, the really wide eyes as well, and just in general exaggerated features. The refined rendering, I just wanted to keep really sketchy, really fine line, outline, and really like loose as well. Adding in the hearts on the cheeks I loved, adding the extra hearts around her I really love, and also having them come out of a portal as well I think is just really cute. It makes me think about, you know, who they're looking at. Could they be coming out of a portal as well? And also the outfit is simple but like has personality to it, so this one's probably one of my most favorites to date, and I could definitely see this turning into a print, a card, an artwork, something in some way. So yeah, that one I smashed out pretty quickly, and I like when that happens. Efficient, good concept, tick. 18 on the other hand, Snooze, was the complete opposite. So again, I was going to use one of my Jelly Bean characters as inspiration because I thought it could be an interesting pose to just like redo and see how much I've grown from drawing characters back then in lockdown to now. I like the idea that they were like collapsing onto the wall and really like leaning into it. The more that I played around with the face, the more it wasn't working. And so I just scratched the whole idea of them leaning against the wall. I moved on to them like almost like laying over a rock and fully really exaggerating the bend of the body, but it also just looked not great. It just looked like they weren't alive and like snoozing or something. It just wasn't working, so I gave up on that one. I then turned it into them laying on a table, almost like resting their heads. And as soon as I got this far, I was just like, this just isn't it. And I told myself I was allowed to give up. So I gave up on this one. And you can tell because this is the 4th one I've done that's just a line drawing. There's no color. I haven't really done much detail. And it's because at this point I was really hitting a speed hump and I was losing motivation, and I just wasn't wanting to spend as much time on them all. So yeah, it's funny that you can see that as I've gone through and you look at them in a line, you can see the motivation drop off, and yeah, that's okay. From this point, because I was really wanting to spend a lot of time playing around with pixel brushes on this and experimenting with like the ways that I illustrate on my iPad, I realized I was losing motivation. So I went off and I watched some other YouTube tutorials and videos of other illustrators demonstrating what they've done with paintbrushes. I went and got some new ones to experiment with, and I just got myself excited again and did that before doing my next artwork. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of a tip. If you're feeling the funk and you're not really having great workflow, like go off, reset yourself, get some inspiration. For me, it's like I get motivated by seeing other people work and seeing their energy go into something that makes me want to do it as well. So yeah, that definitely helped. And then so the next one was candle, and I went straight to ear candles. I love a good ear candle. I love doing them. Also Milky Foot. I like doing all of those kind of gross personal care things. So I found an image of someone doing an ear candle. And yeah, I went with that. So I started off with a pixel brush, just a pencil brush, and I drew out the composition. I sort of got it as right as I could. I then created the refined version of the illustration. The coloring I did with a chalk brush, which was like a new one, and I was really liking the texture that I was getting from that as well, and having the background bleed through. It stayed sketchy, but with the shadows, it really did come to life. The hand was probably, holding the candle was probably the hardest part, was because it's got like a twist in the wrist. And then I wanted to add the dots in the background because, again, it was a new brush. I wanted to start to experiment with it. And yeah, it was a really nice, a nice way to enter back into a drawing, and I had a bunch more energy coming from this. I really like it. I don't think I'd do anything with this, but it's just like a nice drawing. Okay, number 20 was bulb, and I thought of a light bulb instantly, but I wanted to put a light bulb on a tail. Not sure why, I just sort of thought the end of a tail was a light bulb kind of feel, and so I decided to find a reference of a cat and have its tail as the light bulb glowing. I found this one, and so I went and I wanted to also work with this one as having no outline and just being solid shapes that I played around with masking tools to create textures and essentially develop my skills in using the masking tools. So I drew out the body, and then I created all the body parts on different layers. I then needed to add in the face details, and I just haven't done cats before really, so I was trying to work out just how would Jeff draw cats. It ended up being like pretty cute. I then added in the light bulb on the tail and added a bit of a glow around it as well, and the texture of the cat too, I think there's like maybe like 3 different textures on there. Added the grass in the background, that's another one that I really liked, and then the shadow coming from over the front, and it was really nice. Really liked this one, so it was like 2 in a row that when I started to play around with more textures, I was like feeling it a whole bunch more. And then number 21 was Slingshot, which was another one that I wasn't looking forward to because I just don't think slingshots are that interesting as an object, and they're really thin and there's no like detail on them. I don't know, I just didn't really like the idea. The only thing that came to mind was Survivor, and I guess they're more catapults, but the slingshot catapults that they use in those. So I started off drawing my version of like a catapult. It was a bit of a dud. I didn't really like it. And so I went off and just started drawing silhouetted shapes of slingshots and just made them into like symmetrical motifs, essentially. I then pulled them all together and it started to create sort of like a pattern. I realized I hadn't really explored patterns yet in the briefs, in the prompts. So I just kept on drawing more shapes, and I just decided I would make this like a symmetrical pattern in some way. I inverted the colors so it was coming out of a black background, and then at the very end I just added in a little sample of how I think I could color it in with tonal variation, because I just like run out of time and I was like right at the end of my 30 minutes, and so I just like did a suggestion of it for a concept that I really wasn't excited to do or didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted to draw. I think this is pretty successful, completely different to everything else, and I guess that's a good thing, right? All right, the home stretch, the last 10. Okay, so number 22 is Tunnel, With this one, I really wanted to play around with the idea of another character. A reference image that I had was playing off like an animal kind of burrowing kind of tunnel, but I just ditched that straight away because I was really enjoying these characters that I was creating. So to start with, I just sketched out like a pipe kind of tunnel. I then added in a face. Once I got the face drawn in, it was moving on to the outfit, and obviously I went back to doing shoes again. It was a pretty straightforward pose, but I thought it was pretty passable. Then went on to do the more refined version of it, and this time I was using a pencil pixel brush. I'm really enjoying the texture that I'm getting from doing my outlines with this pixel brush. I decided to change and simplify the way the face was looking, and then it was time to add the color. And the one thing that I'm really starting to learn now with Pixel is that by putting in a background color first and then drawing your pencil over the top, it allows me to really see the texture and how I can layer up the color. And yeah, so I'm finally understanding that part of the process. I also really love the scalloped edge on the t-shirt and the little pinstripe detail as well, and playing around with the difference between contrast of the outline and then also doing no outline, and so that creates a really nice depth in detail for the illustration. So yeah, so for tunnel, that's it. Number 23 was message, and I went straight to a text message. I thought it'd be really fun to play off an old school phone, like a Nokia. I think they're a 3310. I think that's the one that I've used, or maybe it's 3315, not really sure. But anyways, I wanted to do as if someone got a text message on their phone. So really playing off nostalgia. So I went off the reference image and just drew out a phone, but made it a bit more chunky and not wanting to make it feel exactly realistic, I guess. I then, like the last one, put in the background color and started to block out the shape. I was playing around with different textures for the shadowing, whether I wasn't sure whether to play with like a stipple, like dotted kind of texture, or to do just like a chalk or a pencil brush for a texture. So I kind of got there eventually, adding all the highlights for the buttons, and it was really quickly coming to life, and I really loved it. I then changed and got rid of that stipple effect, and just went to more flat colors and just relied on texture. And then adding in the highlights on and shadowing on all the buttons and the little white border that goes around the frame. And then adding in the message was really fun. I just really like how it's juvenile and playful, and I think this could be a really interesting idea for a series of drawings where I actually write out the text message and play off the funny little text messages I used to send as a school person to friends, and just kind of that era of time. So once I had finished the phone, I then played around with just the background textures and exploring them a little bit more. The final result I quite like. The dot on large scale, that's the shadow of the side of the phone, makes it feel more flat and paper collage, and yeah, I was fine with what it did. This one I really like, and I think I could do like a series of phones. So yeah, this one is definitely staying in the bank of ideas for concepts after this. Number 24 was wand, and I wanted to do like a fairy kind of character that was referencing the flower people that I mentioned in part 1 of this video, this idea of like these people with like flower heads. So I thought that was a really simple revisiting of an idea. So to get started, I just wanted to get the shape of the body sorted, and just doing a really simple, almost like floating fairy character pose. I then went and started to draw a more fleshed out, detailed outline of the character. I wanted to definitely play with a different type of shoe, so I did like a croc slide kind of moment. A really simple outfit and relying on the head to be the more exciting part. Next was working out the scale of how big to draw the flower petals around the head and make it look realistic as if they've put on this like flower petal around the head. I don't want it to feel like the head is disjointed or it doesn't biologically make sense, I guess. I finally got to a point where I was really happy with it, and then it was time to add the color. So I wanted to keep earthy tones and a little bit more like tertiary colors. So changing the outline completely to a brown, earthy tone really changed up the mood, and I really loved it. And then I just went from there and started to play around with the different outfit colors and the skin tone, adding in the flower color. And then once I was finished with the actual clothing, it was time to work on the background. Obviously, I wanted to make it sky, and I just thought going with the blue was fine. Adding in extra dark, pixely texture behind it was good, but then I wanted to turn it into almost as if the fairy was glowing or the flower person was glowing. And so I added this ring of glow behind them, changing it to a bit more of like a purple color palette, and I really like it. It is potentially one of my favorites. And also I really like the wand references, the flower around her head as well. Number 25, coral. This one I was not really that excited for. I tried to find some interesting looking coral. I thought I was going to do some kind of pattern from it and just use the different types of coral as objects in the pattern. I started off by playing around with just making one interesting coral shape and just didn't really care for it that much. And then I ended up finding this one image of almost like a sponge-like coral, and I went and drew that. I really like the shape, I like the pattern within it, and I then decided, let's just make another character. Lean in. When I'm doing something that I really like, I just lean in hard into it. So I decided to turn this sponge form into a character that had just like a one-eye Cyclops face for something different. I then started to play around with the arms and legs and just elongate the shape so they reference the body. So they kind of like tape it at one end and then the hands go really big. I wanted to add in the ears as well. I had done the rough sketch. I then went back over and created a more clean and crisp vector. I wanted to make sure I was playing around with the layers and putting each limb on a different layer, because I just had a really good feeling that this one could turn into something that I explored down the track. So trying to get my file management sorted for this. Once I was really happy with the body, I then went and did the rest of I did the face. The next stage was to color it in. And so I went for this like green slime algae kind of color and just started to build up the different colors or shades of green, I should say. Once I was really happy with it, I then started to play around with what the shoes could look like and sort of moving back and forth in between coloring the shoes and adding the tone and then going back to the body and adding some tone in as well, and shadowing and working out what are the different shades that I wanted to go by. I eventually got to a point which I was really happy with, and he's super cuddly looking for coral. I then added in the background and adding a bit more of like a highlight on the coral patterns on the body. It's like a hint of yellow that really adds more of like a shine or a brightness to the highlights. And this again, the third one in a row that I've done that I really like. And so I was hoping that this wasn't the downfall of me and that I'd reached my peak, because yeah, the the message wand and this one were all really great. The next one, number 26, is Ladybug. And I didn't really care too much about just doing a typical Ladybug because one, I had done it before in a previous project and I knew that I wasn't going to get anything new out of it. And with the focus of this whole Peachtober being idea generation, I thought push it outside of the typical. So I found this image, I think it's from like a Disney or a Pixar or some kids cartoon of a character that must be called Ladybug. And I thought, cool. So I thought, let's do my own variation on this Ladybug character. First, I wanted to work on the person's pose and making sure I have like drawn it in the most realistic kind of way I could, especially because it's in a really interesting pose where you have to work out the angles of the body and the pose of like the shoulder coming over and that the chest is crossed over. So I wanted to make sure it at least looked right. I then just did a little bit of like warping with the proportions just to make it a bit more free and loose. And then I again wanted to do some file management and play around with layering and masking. And I started to do each limb on different layers so then I could just change them around. And because I knew that I was going to have issues with liking the pose, I thought having each body part on a different layer meant I would be able to tweak where it sits without being destructive. So I was thinking ahead because I knew my skills were limited. So once I drew the legs, the arms, the body, all on different layers, I then moved on to the head, and it started to come together quite quickly and really brought this character into my world, especially with the eyes. The eyes have always been a way for me to really bring something into my world and to push myself out of the expectations that I can put on myself to make something look realistic or look like something else. And as soon as I draw my eyes, it's like just draw, just do your own thing. This doesn't have to look like anything else. And it's really wild that it still happens to this day, and this is one of the drawings where it did that. As soon as I drew this eye, I was like, oh, I don't have to look at the reference image as much, just do what you want to do. The next thing I wanted to play around with was the spots, which I wanted to make it really flat, as if I did like a paper cutout. And that you're giving a suggestion of this shape, but it almost makes it look like a camouflage effect, I guess. I put in the dots and tried to get them just at like the perfect scale, and then that allowed me to go back and then think about what the nose and the mouth could look like and if the coloring had to change. And then because my head was already in camouflage mode, I decided to make the background like a pink with the polka dots in red and have it riff off the costume. So I played with that and it resulted like this, and I think it's pretty successful. For what I was trying to do, I think it works really well, and I would definitely want to do a few more exercises like this where I'm challenging myself to do interesting poses that I guess will just build my confidence in being able to draw more bodies in more different ways. Number 27 is Pond, and my head instantly went to Frog. First of all, I wanted to get a really animated body and really play off like almost like more legs and body than anything else. I got to a body shape pretty quickly, and then I just kept on refining it more and more until I was really happy with how much the frog filled up the frame, I guess. The next thing I wanted to play with was adding sort of like the Jeffisms to it. So adding the fan around the eyes that kind of reference the flowers, putting a little flower on its belly button. So it could potentially, like in my head, be almost like this flower frog that's in the same world as the flower people. Little things like that that really help it be recognizably me. So if it wasn't next to my name, anyone could realize it is my work. And then adding in the tongue and then it trying to catch a fly, I thought was just a nice bit of movement within the concept. Once I got that mock-up sorted, it was then moving on to doing the final rendering, and this time round I wanted to play around with some more tapering at the edges of all the outline and it just felt really nice the way that it was all coming together. I then started to fill it out with all the green tones. Having it as a green outline instead of a black allowed it to be really softer, I guess. And then even putting the fly in as green as well. Just, it's wild how much taking black out of your work can really soften everything up. I love that the nose are like two little love hearts. And then I went off and created a texture to put over the top of the frog to then take away and like erase where the shadowing would be. So it's playing with the negative space to create the volume of the limbs, which I hadn't done yet and I really liked. And then the final part was to add in the background and just doing a really simple watercolor kind of effect. And for this, yeah, I really like it's something that I, again, could see exploring more and makes me want to bring all these characters together in one frame and see what they all look like in one Jeff world. Number 28 is Chomp. And my head went straight to the chocolate as a kid. With the crocodile on it. Not sure why. It just went straight there. And I was also getting very tired by this point and was kind of wanting it all to end. And you can probably tell by the quality of this illustration, it's not the best. I did the full outfit, put the headphones on him, backwards cap, filled out the rest of his outfit. I then did the second and third outline version of it. And it was like feeling a bit better, but I still wasn't loving it. And then I decided there was too much detail in the outlines and it just wasn't feeling right. So I turned it into just block shapes and removed the outline. And as I started to do that, it was feeling a bit more exciting. But as I got towards the end, it was just a meh. I think it needed to have a bit more variation. And I think maybe adding some more patterns could work. But yeah, I was at the end of the 30 minutes and I wasn't going to put any more time or effort into it. It just is what it is. Number 29 is Float. And I just went and got a reference image of just an illustration of like a floating figure because I wasn't sure how to make them weightless, I guess. And I think the image I got is more of like a tech infograph image. But yeah, it was, I guess, a good start for me. So the idea was just to draw a floating figure. I started by just mapping out the body, and then I decided why not put a feather in the character's hand, because then that references Float a whole bunch more and makes it feel a bit more weightless. And I went back to that Cyclops idea from Coral and decided to play with that. I added in really long hair and a flowy dress and just made it feel really, I guess, feminine in some way. It's definitely giving me that character out of Futurama, Layla. I then decided to exaggerate the hair to be even longer, almost Rapunzel-like. And I just started to add in, with the final outline rendering, the details of like the dress and the sleeves. I wanted to make the dress details and the feather to have a bit more of a dynamic feel and I guess be more secondary. Once the outline was done, I wanted to obviously colour it in, and I kept these more pastel-y, bluey pink tones through the whole thing. Having it with a blue skin, takes away from being human, which feeds in well to the Cyclops idea. What is this character? How does it belong in my Jeff world? All these great questions that I like to ask myself. So it's a pretty simple illustration, and I like how it slots into the other ones that I've been drawing, and it was kind of getting me excited for the final two drawings again, that maybe I hadn't run out of steam. Number 30 is Moss, and I totally forgot to screen capture the whole thing. And I guess it's fate because I, again, did not like this one, did not like this concept, did not know how I was going to draw it. And I guess it was just editing Jeff, thanking myself that I didn't have to edit the footage. So for this one, just looking off where I ended up at the end of the 30 minutes, I was going for some kind of play off a stump with moss on it. I did some shoes that were almost like the buttress roots. Thought I could try and save the concept by putting some flowers coming out of the top of it. Did not work. Did not like it. We're just going to leave it there and move on to the last one. R.I.P. Moss. And then the final one is Spooky, which I love horror. And so I thought this was going to be a great one to finish on. I wasn't sure what to originally reference or think about because I kind of had a lot of ideas. But I decided to start off with the idea of my favorite horror film, which is You're Next. I used the mask that one of the villains or killers wear, which is like a wolf mask. And so I started off with that and just thought, we'll just see where that takes me. So I started to draw a face. I wanted to make sure it was like majority symmetrical. So I just started drawing, one side of a face and then reflecting it out. And then it was going to be the same. The wolf definitely didn't look like a wolf as much as I thought. It was turning into like a dog, bear, bat kind of situation. I wanted to keep the tonal work rather than doing outline. So I just started to just build it up more and more and more, adding in the different tones of the fur. And then adding in the orange was when it started to really come to life and feel like it had a bit more energy to it. Once I'd finished the face, I thought this can't be the end. That's a little bit underwhelming. So I decided to make it smaller and thought, let's create a body that is like a bat. So I started to make these wings, and much like the face, I just started to slowly build up the layers and replicate it out and play off the line work and all those sort of details that you get within wings. I really love that it has like a cape kind of feel to it, and it does look ghostly, so it really plays off spook well. Putting it on the black background, but it being more of like a matte black, I think works really well. So the saturation is low, and then the pink, almost like little hair details that go around it, gives that moth, furry insect kind of feel. So it was really nice. And then some stars around it as well to make it more of a nighttime scene. And it ended up being a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. And I really quite like it. So that is the very last one of Peachtober. And so we did it. Claps for Jeff. Pat on the back for Jeff. Now that was a lot, and I am definitely happy it's over, but also definitely happy that I did it. So considering that I wanted this whole project to be about idea generation for developing into future ideas and future concepts, if I had to pick 3 that I love and that I wanted to explore more, it would be the crater idea, the sidekicks wrestling concept, and number 3, the Nokia one. There's probably a few more that I like a short list as well, which I obviously mentioned through the whole video, but yeah, those 3 are my top ones, which I'm probably going to go off now over the next few months if I get time before Christmas to explore a little bit more and I guess just brainstorm what I want to turn them into. It'd be really nice to know what your favorites are, what you liked about any of them, or what you thought were rubbish, or maybe you have one that you like that I didn't like. I could probably make a part 3, which is going to be actually refining those 3 ideas and showing you what I make out of them. So I'm going to tentatively put that in my schedule of something to make, but I don't know if it'll ever come. It's just a surprise if it does. I really think Peachtober is a great project to do for any type of creative that wants to get some new ideas and energy flowing in their work. I think it's really great to put restrictions or limitations on what you're going to do for the month in terms of making it realistic for you to actually achieve it, and not be too hard on yourself. If things change, you know, just make it work for yourself. Change the rules, but make them to suit you. So, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm gonna leave it here. Feel free to let me know in the comments of what is your favorite prompt that I did. If you did it, let me know so I can come and have a look at what you've done. And otherwise, I will just see you in the next video. Come and say hello to me on Instagram too. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I'll just see you in the next one. All right, love you all. Bye.